like I'm sure you've heard that like Mormons believe that we'll have our own planets after we die. Have you heard that?
I have not heard this.
You need to listen the musical.
Oh, I have a story about that, but I want you to finish what you're saying. Idalia and Mariah, thank you so much for being on my podcast. I really appreciate you guys agreeing to just talk to me about religion and your exit from it and what you think and what you believe and how involved you still are and wherever we go with this episode, because I know it's not an easy topic and it's not always a popular topic, especially from backgrounds like we come from. So that being said, I would love for you each to introduce yourselves, who you are, what your lives are about, what you do, and then introduce the religion that you were going to talk about.
Okay. Sure. I'm Mariah Wilcox. Let's see. I am like a teacher by trade. I've taught middle school before, and most recently I've been working as a professor teaching music. I'm a trained opera singer.
I mean, you're like a hardcore trained opera singer. You're like the
Yeah.
real deal. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. It's probably 12 years now.
How long were you a music professor for? Or are you?
I started like right at the beginning of the pandemic. So it's been almost 3 years.
Got it. I can't believe that. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, almost 3 years. It's like shocking. That's awesome. And we know each other because we went to high school together in Bentonville, Arkansas. So that's our origin story. Yeah. And then Idalia, tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm from Monterrey, Mexico, and I'm a violin player. I play some guitar and piano too. I studied some music back home, and then when I was 29, I decided to go to school, back to school, and I ended up going to BYU, Idaho. That's where we met in my second last semester.
What did you study at BYU?
BA in music.
Music. Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. So BYU, you guys are going to talk about Mormonism.
Yes.
Just throwing that out there for anybody who isn't familiar. Some people may have picked up on that. So I'll tell you what it looked like from the outside and like what I remember, and then feel free to just elaborate, tell me I'm wrong, tell me it absolutely wasn't what it was. So I grew up Southern Baptist. You grew up Mormon. We grew up in the same town. And from my experience, one, I thought that everywhere in the US had that many Mormons. I didn't realize until I left Bentonville that was like an unusual number of Mormons outside of like Utah. Right. I thought you guys were like the biggest clique. Like every really super cool person that I knew with like a million friends, they were all Mormon. I remember not even really knowing what it meant to be Mormon, but wishing I were Mormon because everyone that I knew that was Mormon was a really talented musician, was very, very good at some kind of artistic thing, whether it was literal art, whether it was forensics, whether it was drama. Everybody could sing. Everybody could play the violin. It was just this wild clique of popular musicians who were also Mormon. And I just thought it was dope as hell, but I didn't know anything about it. But I do remember feeling bad for everybody because they weren't supposed to drink caffeine. I do remember being like, oh, that sucks because I've been an addict since I was like born. But and I honestly think that's probably why I didn't pursue Mormonism like more at the time, was because I just really liked Starbucks. I don't know. Yeah. But again, common misconceptions. I'm sure there's nuance there. But your experiences growing up Mormon, tell me about it.
I would say my experience growing up Mormon was fine, especially it was a struggle when I was like a young child in elementary school. I hated going to church. I hated wearing dresses. I hated, like, I remember you get baptized at the age of 8 in Mormonism, and I just did not want to get baptized. Like, I didn't really want anything to do with going to church. And I think that was more of like I was a wild child and just didn't want to sit still for 3 hours every Sunday.
Yep.
Um, but once I got into like my teen years, besides having to like repress homosexuality, like I felt like it was fine. Like you said, like I had lots of friends. I always had something to do because Mormonism is such a like tight and like close-knit community. Um, so I mean, I definitely have religious trauma, but I do have a lot of like really wonderful memories from being in church as a teenager.
Mhm. And how early on did you know that you were gay?
I think I knew in like seventh grade is when I was like, I have never had a crush on a boy before, and that's kind of weird. And I like think that all of my girlfriends are really pretty. And I remember being like, I think I'm a lesbian. But I knew that I wasn't supposed to. Not that I was like, oh, this is bad and I shouldn't be doing this, but I was like, I don't think I'm supposed to be a lesbian. And so I think I kind of like I developed, I say with air quotes, a crush on one of my guy friends. And then as soon as I had like latched onto this friend, I was like, oh, guess I'm not gay. Like, I guess this means I'm straight.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I ignored it for most of like junior high and high school. But once I got into college, then I started realizing that it was not just like appreciating other women's beauty. It was more of like a real attraction to women.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. And Idalia, what was your experience? Like, were you always Mormon? Did you grow up Mormon?
No,
How did that
I'm
happen?
a convert in the church. I was born, like, grew up and born Catholic, like most Latinos, I think. Um, and when I was 29, I had the opportunity to travel to Utah uh, for like a music festival. And my teacher, my violin teacher, he was part of the church. He was member of the church. And he was really nice. I never felt like he pushed us like to be part of it, but he was like, hey, we're gonna read the scriptures, gonna come. Hey, we're going to like a church on Sunday. Like my mother-in-law would really appreciate if you guys like comment because we were staying with them. So I was like, yeah, sure. And we have the chance to go like Temple Square. There is like a Mormon Disneyland, like the Vatican, like for Catholic
yeah,
people.
it's like the Vatican of
Yeah,
Mormonism.
it's where the
Yeah.
temple is, and there's like a lot of historic. There's a museum.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff, and there's where the tabernacle choir presents. So we were there, and I was going through a really hard time in my life. I was like in a dark place, and seeing like all like welcoming, like everyone was so happy, and everything was so perfect, and family was like united. I was like, I want this, but I cannot have it because I'm gay. So it was like this, like, oh my god, this is awesome. This is what I want. I want a family. I want like this unity, but I cannot have it.
Yeah.
So time passed. I ended up going to church. The missionaries started going to my house, and I was familiar with all the terms they were talking because I grew up Catholic and I know a lot of stuff. They only add like the Book of Mormon, like the Mormonism, like ideas. And I literally got baptized when I was 30, like on my birthday.
Wow.
And at the beginning, it was awesome. Like it really helped me. I really like appreciate like that part of the show, like the church, like people coming to me, like and do activities and do something. Uh, and I mean, I have the chance to go to school and get a degree. That in Mexico, having a degree from out of the country is like a huge thing. Like especially if you have a degree from the United States, is like
Yeah.
that's huge, regardless of the school. But like when like the semesters were, every semester was harder because you need to take like religion classes, and that's kind of like overwhelming. And this class called something about the family, eternal family.
Yeah.
So, and they have a chapter about LGBT community and
Right. I was gonna say, like,
marriage.
it was probably like
And
driven home. Yeah.
yeah, it brings a lot of anxiety, and like you inside of me, I was an adult. Most of my classmates were like 18, 19, 20, but I was like 30, 31, and I already have like a life. So I was like, this is not true. Like I'm
You
fine.
weren't as
Like,
like easily swayed as the
Yeah.
18-year-old's going to be by
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just like the environment and like comments by teacher, like kind of like it doesn't make sense at all. Like some like racist, but we are not racist. It's like they say the comment, but they don't. I remember
Not to
one-
be racist, but followed by a very racist.
But
Yeah.
because this one, I remember in one class, it was like New Testament or something, and they asked, or the subject about like Jesus being white, when he like is the picture we have of Jesus Christ, like a white man. And they say like, and the teachers say like, well, Mary might be like a colored woman because where they are, but because he was son of God, God is white.
Did
What?
they really say that?
Yeah.
What? Okay, first of all, they were Arab. They were Arab. Like,
Wild.
let's just
Yes.
like literally, if you met Jesus in real life in the United States, you would sweat if he got on the plane with you. Like, let's just be honest.
Yes.
Like, you would
Right.
not let Jesus sit next to you on American Airlines because you would be racist. So not you personally, but I mean, just like people don't want to address that. They don't want to address that they would probably be bigoted against Jesus if they saw what he actually looked like in real life.
Exactly. Yes.
But yeah, but he was white because his dad is white, pretty much.
That's
I
wild.
would like to
I mean, this
remind
is
our
like
audience that literally no one has ever seen God. Just like to throw that out there. Nobody's ever seen God.
Well, the Mormon prophets have.
Oh,
Supposedly.
got it. And like, what is he, like a 10 or like a 9?
Yes,
Like, what are we watching? What do they say?
I'm sure he's a 10 out of 10.
It's like those TikTok.
It's a 10, but
Oh yeah.
He's a 10, but turns out he's, Middle Eastern. So, so Christians got to bump him down a few notches. But wow. And so, Idalia, how early did you know that you were gay?
oh, I found out I was gay when I was like third grade, like kindergarten.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
She's
I mean,
always
for
known.
me, it was like a natural thing. I was
Yeah.
just like, I mean, I know I like girls, and I know girls supposed to like boys.
Yeah.
And I didn't know like any of the terms like lesbian, gay, queer. I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah.
Because I was born in 87, and I figured out this in the 90s, when still in Mexico was kind of like a taboo topic. You don't talk about it. And it's when like pride started like growing just a little bit, at least in Mexico. I remember, I think it's right now, I think it's funny. I was watching The Nanny, like the TV show, and there's like an episode, like there's like a lesbian, and there's like a funny incident and something. I was like, oh, that has a name. So that's how like I
Yeah.
figured out, like, well, I'm like somewhere there. But yeah, pretty
She has the
young.
nanny to thank for her sexuality.
Yeah.
Like the rest of us.
Yeah. I remember I was telling my mom this just like literally like a week ago. It's so interesting. I told her, we were talking about like society and like how different things are and how like people can be more open about who they are as people. And I told her that the first memory I have of ever hearing the word lesbian was we were watching TV, and we watched all the, like daytime trash TV or whatever, like Maury and Sally, Jesse, Raphael or whatever. And Rosie came on. And my mom was like, oh, Rosie's a lesbian. And I was like, what does that mean? And she was like, that means she has a girlfriend instead of a boyfriend. And I was like, oh, okay. Do you think she wants a boyfriend? And my mom was like, probably not. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, that was it. Like, that was the extent of the conversation.
Yeah.
And now I feel like the understanding is so much greater. Like the definition is so much more clear, and we learn that it's not so black and white. Also, it's like this, everybody is just on this spectrum of sexuality and identity, and so it's very interesting to just see how that, I feel like the further we go into the future, the more open we are about all these things, and the more open the people who don't like it are becoming as well.
Yeah.
Because the sad part is, in order to promote freedom of speech and say what you want and say what you feel, that includes everybody.
Yes.
Even the people who don't have anything nice to say. And that's the only thing I miss about the 90s is like, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything. That's out the window. We got rid of that. So then you guys meet, and you met while you, Mariah, were working at a Mormon school, right?
Yeah.
And then Idalia, you were attending the school. So how did you kind of figure out like, oh, I'm picking up what they're putting down. This is worth risking it all.
Well, yeah. She had been like DMing me on Instagram for months.
Yeah.
And
she was too busy for me.
Well, I didn't know, like I knew who she was because I would see her around the music building, and I thought she was really cute, but I mean, she was a student. I assumed she was like 20 years old, and so I wasn't going to pursue anything in that direction. Right. Even though she wasn't my student.
Right.
But I kept getting these DMs from a girl whose name I didn't recognize. And I just figured that she was probably somebody I had met at an audition or a competition somewhere. And we'd had, a small conversation. And because I have several people who I don't really talk to, but they comment on my Facebook stuff all the time and my Instagram stuff. But she sent me several DMs in like 1 week, and I was like, I probably actually do know who this person is, and I just need to figure out who they are. So I went and stalked her on Instagram, and I was like, oh, this is this girl in the music department. And so we started talking, and I found out that she was like actually older than me, and I was like, we talked for like 3 days on Instagram for like hours, just like late into the night. And we would both talk to our roommates and be like, I think she is like romantically interested, because we're talking till like 2 a.m.
Right.
So we just like made plans to hang out, and then we confessed our love to each other, and we saw
the fireworks in the 3rd of July.
It was the 3rd of July, and because Rexburg is such a like Mormon town, and they don't do activities on Sunday, we had the fireworks on the 3rd of July instead of the 4th of July.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we saw the fireworks that night.
You mentioned you had roommates. You both did. Did they know about your sexual identity? Were they kind of suspecting? Was it an open secret? What was that like given the environment that you were in?
Idalia's roommates were super accepting. They all knew she was gay, and they actually like all of them were also somewhere on the spectrum. Yeah. My roommates knew I was gay, and I was renting a room from a family who I was friends with. They knew I was gay and seemed extremely supportive, but the day after we started dating, they asked me to move out. So
like they asked you to move out that day, or they gave you a notice, or what did
they were like, just get out as soon as you can.
Wow. And were you surprised by this?
I was very surprised, because they had been like quite like loud supporters of the LGBTQ community for as long as I had known them. So I was actually like really shocked that they did that.
But I think it has to be like they are managers of a like student housing complex.
Yeah.
And both of them are professors in BYU, Idaho.
Yes. And so they were they said that they were like nervous of like any repercussions that could come back on them.
Yeah.
But I was a little shocked because I mean, I'm a tenant. It's not like
Right.
they're harboring a fugitive,
Right. Right. And I was going to ask you that if you thought maybe they kind of felt like they were almost guilty by association.
Yes.
But also, it's always very interesting to me when it comes to religious people that there is this message that says, love everyone, accept everyone, treat everyone the way Jesus would. But when it comes time to actually put that plan into action, so many people hide. That could have been their perfect opportunity to showcase how much they supported the LGBTQ community by basically like harboring a fugitive, quote unquote. But instead, when it really came down to it, we talked off camera a little bit about how this, especially Mormonism, but I feel like Christianity in general is such like a family, quote unquote, and like it's the clique and it's the group and you want to be involved and you don't want to disappoint anybody, do you? Because man, you'd also be disappointing Jesus and stuff like that.
Not and Jesus.
Right. And so when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, they always choose the family over the message that they swore up and down that they touted and presented. It's, and I feel like a lot of people say that about their parents too. They're like, my parents are super pro gay unless I'm gay. Yes. And then it's like, whoa. So that being said, I know that you guys recently just kind of posted your first public out post yesterday. What has that been like in terms of your relationship with Mormons that you grew up with or that you were going to church with or working with up until very recently?
I have, well, and we discussed this like before and after we posted that on my Instagram page. I have not received any like messages or like comments that have been like homophobic in any way. They've all been extremely supportive, but I lost like 15 followers in like 48 hours.
Yeah. My thing was, I was wondering if they wouldn't say anything, but you would suddenly notice that somebody, like when Facebook says you should add this person and you're like, I did. Yes. Like, what is this? Yeah.
Like, where'd they go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking back on how you grew up in the Mormon church, what were kind of the hallmarks? What were the first moments where you were like, this doesn't make sense to me. This isn't necessarily what I want to do with my life. What was that journey like?
I mean, so like I said, I didn't like it until I was probably like 13. I just didn't enjoy church at all. And I was like the perfect like poster child for like a Mormon teenager. Like I was super obedient and I went to church all the time. I was like president of my youth group and of the seminary class that I was in and a lot of things. But I remember having conversations at a pretty young age with my mom and with other members of my family about issues that I had with the church regarding specifically like the sexism that I would see in just the way that the church is structured. And I was always like quickly shut down by whoever I was talking to, but it always bothered me because I wasn't saying like, this is wrong, the church is wrong, I want to leave the church at that point in my life. But I was saying like, why is it this way? And people would get really defensive and be like, it's just the way it is.
Right.
And you need to learn to abide by those rules.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
And do you consider yourself agnostic, atheist? Do you have a label that you use? Are you still somewhat spiritual? What's your take?
I mean, I have always considered myself more of a spiritual person than a religious person, even when I ascribed to Mormonism. I probably considered myself agnostic now. But I still find myself like praying fairly often, just because I think it's like a comfort thing for me.
Yeah.
Because it's been so well inscribed into my body.
Yeah.
But
I tell people all the time, I'm agnostic until there's turbulence on the airplane. And then
Exactly.
it's like, dear God, I'll retract everything I said. I'll delete my podcast. I'll do all that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna pull this up real quick. One sec. There we go. Better lighting. So then, Idalia, you grew up Catholic, right?
Yeah.
Did you grow up pretty strict Catholic? Did you grow up loosely Catholic? Orthodox?
Still like loose. I got baptized as a baby, and then I go to like Sunday school for like to get my primera comunión, first communion. And technically after that, I was like done. Like I was like middle school, high school. I was like the rebellious child. Like I didn't want to go to church at all.
Yeah.
And my mom is the one, like my mom and her family are the one that are more like devoted to the church and like go to church every Sunday. Even when it was like COVID, she listened or like watch on YouTube or something like the mass. But my dad, I talked to him like before I came to Vegas like 2 months ago, and I was like, "Can I ask you a question? Like, do you believe?" And he's like, "No." So I think my dad is more like atheist, but he doesn't put a name on his belief.
Yeah.
And I feel kind of the same way. Like I have been through phases in my life. When I was like high school, like teenager and like young adult, like early 20s, I was like, I just don't care. Like if there's something or not, there's nothing. I don't really, it doesn't do anything for me. But then I have like these problems and I found the church and I was kind of like, yes, no, like in this kind of like fight, like I have like maybe 2 semesters I was like really into like the church. I believe in God.
She even got a boyfriend when she first
I got
moved
a
to BYU.
boyfriend.
Girl, don't do that.
I'm going for it.
Don't do that. Like, I'm straight and I'm saying, don't do that.
Yeah, no.
Don't do it. I live with a man and I'm saying, don't do that.
Yeah. So
so what's that like for a second, dating a man when you pretty much know you're gay?
I think it was pretty chill because you are in BYU, Idaho, and you have the honor code.
Oh, so you dated him at BYU?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
What was
So he's
that
also
like?
Mormon. It was literally like kindergarten, like boyfriends, like holding hands,
Yeah.
like some like barely kissing, like, and he's just like it was younger than me. Like everyone is younger than me in BYU, Idaho, even teachers. But it was like pretty easy, like to date him.
Yeah.
And after like dating Latinas, and like all the drama and like all that, he was pretty easygoing.
Was he white
Like,
or was he?
He was white from Washington, I think, for like small town in like Washington.
Oh yeah, so he's like white. He's like white. He's like glow in the dark. Take him to a rave.
Yeah. So I mean, it was easy because it was more like a friendship.
Yeah. I mean, Mormonism, like a lot of Christian religion, preaches like abstinence until you're married. And if you go to BYU, you can be
kicked out.
Yeah, you can be expelled or at least like extremely disciplined for having premarital sex.
Is that why everybody gets married before graduation?
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. I remember, I won't name any names, but I do remember there was a Mormon couple who got together at Bentonville, and then they went to BYU. For anybody who's unfamiliar, that stands for Brigham Young University. They went to BYU in Utah, and they broke up. while they were at BYU, and they posted this like huge, basically like apology letter that they couldn't like make it to marriage, and that like they basically, it was like an apology to God, even though they know that that's his message and he has a purpose for them, and their statuses were the same. You could tell they had like gotten together and like copied and pasted the same thing, but it was basically like, don't shun either of us for not making this really. It was so, I was like, you guys are 21, relax. Like, it's okay. But then I remember the culture is very much, you meet your partner very young, you get married probably before you're done in school or immediately when you're done in school, and then you live that Mormon lifestyle. And I also noticed that everybody I knew who was Mormon wound up at BYU somewhere, like some BYU. And I just thought that was very interesting, because it's like, part of you is like, oh, they all look so happy and in love. And then the other part of you is like, oh, because they literally are in fear of being single, because that means something different in Mormonism than it means anywhere else. You know, people make fun of like Southern Baptists for getting married at 15 and having like 3 kids. But I feel like in Mormonism, there's almost this ingrained expectation that if you're not at least engaged by the time you're out of BYU, what are you even doing?
Yeah. When I was dating this person, this guy from BYU, Idaho, we were dating for like 3 months. And I remember one of my classmates like find out I was dating someone, and she was like, "Are you getting engaged?" I was like, "We have been dating for like 2 or 3 months." She was like, "And like, do you think would you get engaged?" And I was like, no.
I mean, joke's on her, you did get engaged to somebody you met at BYU. That's funny.
And maybe you can explain why it's so important. Like, there's 3 different like heaven, like kingdoms in the church.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And to get to the highest, you need to do all the Mormon like step by step. Like,
what are those steps?
Getting baptized, going to the mission, you don't have to go to BYU school, but most of LDS members does, and get married in the temple, and have kids in the covenant. Like, it's all a process. Like, go to mission also when you're like an adult, because this is also a thing. And that's like your ticket to go to the highest kingdom. And then if you don't get married, well, you go somewhere else. And if you don't do anything, you go other places. So
if you don't get married, you literally, after death, you go somewhere else than the married Mormons.
Yes.
Interesting. Is it purgatory? Where do you go?
So there are 3 like levels of heaven. And you can, if you're not married, you can still make it into the highest level, but then there are like levels within that level. And so you just won't be fully exalted, I think is what the like terminology is. And so you won't be able to, like, I'm sure you've heard that like Mormons believe that we'll have our own planets after we die. Have you heard that?
I have not heard this.
You need to listen to the musical.
Oh, I have a story about that, but I want you to finish what you're saying.
So Mormons for a long, long time preached that if you like did all of these things, you got married, you got baptized, all of these things, that you would be given your own planet to rule over, like our God did for this earth.
Are there, like, as much respect as possible, are there people on this planet? Or what are you ruling on this planet?
So we believe, well, Mormons believe that like God, which we refer to as Heavenly Father, like created all of the children that are on the earth. Like, he created them himself with his wife, and
there's a Heavenly Mother,
put them on earth.
Interesting. Who is the Heavenly Mother? Does she have a name, or is she just kind of referred to being?
We barely talk about her, but
yeah, she's we're not really allowed to talk about her because she's quote unquote so sacred.
Interesting.
But really, it's just sexism.
Did he meet her at BYU? Is my question.
Yeah.
Is that where they met?
Yeah.
Interesting. I had no idea. So
Yeah.
I saw Book of Mormon in like 2015 in Chicago. Fantastic. But I was there with a friend and I was sitting in the row. We were waiting for the show to start. Lights were still up, whatever. And this whole row of like young teenagers, I would say like 13 to 15, they all fill in the row in front of us and they take a seat. And I'm looking and I'm like, I see a lot of ties. And I turned to my friend and I was like, don't look now. But I think the row in front of us thinks that this is a literal adaptation of the Book of Mormon. And he was like, you're kidding. And I was like, I am not kidding. They left at intermission.
Oh, I'm sure.
They left at intermission. And I was like, I truly think they thought it was a musical adaptation of the Book of Mormon. And then they realized very quickly that that is not what that was.
Oh, I'm sure.
And I hope whoever was leading them got fired because do your homework. Like literally it's written by the same people who wrote South Park. Everybody knows that. Right. That's like the selling point.
Yes.
So were there any parts of Mormonism at all that you still look back on and you're like, I'm glad I was exposed to that. I'm glad that was part of my life. I still carry that with me.
I'm sure there's,
I guess, that are specific to Mormonism and not just like youth,
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing that I really loved about Mormonism was how like tight-knit the community is, and just being able to like have somewhere to go twice a week and have like this group of friends at school, which I mean a lot of members don't have because like you said, like Bentonville has not a ton of Mormons, not like Utah, but a pretty like hefty group.
They got a lot of them.
Yeah. And we were all good friends.
Yeah, everybody knew everybody.
Yes.
Like I would meet a Mormon in Springdale and they'd be like, do you know so and so? And I'm like, actually I do. Are you all related? Like how does this like yeah.
Right.
Now is there like a future for you two among those same people now that you've come out, now that you are like out about your relationship and you're engaged? Do you think from now on, if you had to guess, is it just going to be like polite, cordial interactions? Are there some people that are ride or die? Are there like, and I'm sure your families probably reacted in a certain way. I don't know.
In one way or another.
Yeah.
I would say all of my like really close friends have been extremely supportive, regardless of where they stand with the church. A lot of my friends have also left Mormonism, but even my friends who are still very much in the church are very supportive of me and super happy for us. My family, I don't really know how my parents feel about things. All of my siblings are fairly supportive.
Good.
My parents are having a hard time coming to terms with things. Especially because we hid our relationship for a really long time, and then I came out to them, and then a month later I was engaged, and they're, it's been a bit of a roller coaster for them. But they've not had the reaction I would have liked them to have, but it's probably the reaction I was expecting.
Yeah, you weren't surprised, but you're still just like,
Yeah, it's a bummer, but
do you think you'll find out that a lot of people can't come to your wedding that you want there?
Oh, I don't know. And not of people that I want there, I guess.
Yeah, you're like, oh, the people I want there are going to be there. It's just not a lot of people that I want there.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that there's, I mean, maybe some of my aunts and uncles who aren't on Facebook and don't know that I've come out. I can imagine some of them being uncomfortable, but I don't know that they wouldn't come.
Right. So I know that when people a lot of people, when they think of Mormons or Latter-day Saints and they know what that is, they think of the people coming door to door and, knocking on your door, or in my position, pulling up in a white Escalade. How do you decide which Mormons go to BYU and which ones go on mission? Is there an order that works?
Oh, sorry. I think our dogs just scared themselves waking.
I thought that was my dog. I was like, what the?
Can you ask that again? I'm sorry.
Yeah. So I know that a lot of people identify Mormonism with the people who come up to your door or approach you outside. They ask you if you've heard of Mormonism. They give you the book. And I've always wondered, because they always look fairly young, I've always wondered, is there a particular order or decision making in terms of who gets to go to college, who goes on their 2-year mission? Do you do one and then the other? How does that work? Is it different for men and women?
It is kind of different for men and women. Especially it used to be different. Men were allowed to go on their missions starting at the age of 19 up until like 2012. And women couldn't go on their missions until they were 21.
Oh, interesting.
Whatever reason. I think it's so they could have an opportunity to get married and have children. But they changed that in 2012 to men can now go at 18 and women can go at 19. I don't know why there's still an age difference, especially because it's like so close.
Because we all know that men mature faster than women. So we don't want these hoes out in the streets too young.
Not the hoes.
Yeah.
So some men, if they like graduate high school at 17, will like go to college first
for like a year.
For a year
to their mission.
Yeah. Or some of them, like they want to do a year of college before they go on their missions, and so they'll go and do that. But I would say that most boys now are just going straight out of high school. Girls will usually go to a year of college because they can't go till they're 19. And girls are not as heavily encouraged to go on a mission as boys are. Boys, they say that it's voluntary, but
there's a lot of pressure.
Heavily pressured to go on a mission.
Voluntary, kind of like the draft.
Yeah.
At least you get to pick which one you join, I think, most of the time.
Exactly.
And some people cannot go because like health problems. Like when you have like a condition, like the church doesn't.
You have to meet several health requirements to go on a mission.
Interesting.
So I know some people who like, if they have like extreme depression and are on like strong antidepressants, they can't go because of that health requirement.
And they're also just not getting into heaven. Like,
right.
I'm on Adderall. I'm not making
Forget about it.
I'm not making it.
No, yeah. And it's kind of crazy because, like my brother was in this situation and he was on this medication that had been like seriously helping him. Like he had not felt this good his entire life.
Wow.
And, my mom still was like, well, can't you just do without it for 2 years? And my brother was like, no, like literally I can't.
No. Literally no. Yeah. So. Interesting. And so when people go to that year of college and then they go on mission, do they typically go back to college or?
Yes.
Okay. And so in Chicago, there's a school called Loyola and it's for Catholic. Yes. You can be Baptist and go there, but it's primarily Catholic. And if you get into Loyola, you get to go for free. You don't actually have to pay tuition. Oh. Is that why everybody goes to BYU? Is there a different reason everybody goes to BYU?
So Mormons pay tithing.
Oh, I'm sorry, not Loyola. Moody. Loyola is very expensive. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
Moody Bible Institute.
Loyola.
No.
It is kind of like that. So Mormons pay tithing. It's 10% of all of their income. And so if you are a member of the church, you get a discount on tuition, and it's a pretty hefty discount. And you can still go if you're not a member of the church, but it's like twice as much. So like, how much tuition did you pay?
I think it's like
3,500?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I paid like 1,800 when I was a student 10 years
Per
ago.
semester, per year.
Semester, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
So it's extremely affordable. I even, when I was a professor there, I would talk to some of my students about the possibility of transferring to schools that had better music programs, because BYU Idaho does not have a great one. And they would be like, I can't afford it. And I was like, I can't argue with you there.
Yeah. And did it feel, was there any conflict there working for a Mormon university or like a religious university when you had kind of the internal monologue going on that you weren't straight and maybe you weren't religious? And
yeah, I just like never talked about religion. When students would bring it up, I would just kind of listen and like not really give my opinion on things. I would encourage them to do things that were healthy for them. Like if they, wanted to pray about things, I would encourage them to like really think about things, ponder about the decisions that they should make. But mostly I kept my mouth shut, which was mildly annoying, but like, I don't know, it was my job, it wasn't a part of I tried not to make it my like whole life.
Your identity.
So, yeah.
And were you religious when you first started working there, or were you kind of on the fence already, or how did that opportunity come to you?
So I originally I stopped going to church in probably 2016, beginning of 2017. And I left because I just like wasn't finding any sort of like answers or peace going to church anymore. And I was like, what is the point of this? And then when I was out for a couple of years, I was like, still like not finding the answers to my life that I thought I would leaving the church. So I went back to like Sunday meetings with like this stipulation in my head of like, I'm allowed to believe what I want instead of just like blindly agreeing to all the things that Mormonism teaches. And so I started working at BYU Idaho with this idea that like most of the gospel that the Mormon church teaches is true, but a good chunk of it is racist and homophobic and sexist. But pretty quickly after I started working there, I decided that I didn't believe any of it. So,
yeah. And this is a question for both of you. Do you have any, if you could go back and say something to the people who were the biggest religious influences on you, whether it was like the leaders of your church or your classes or your friends, is there anything that you would ask them, like why this, why that, or is there anything you would say to them or do differently? If you could kind of not confront them necessarily, but if you had a moment to like honestly have a conversation with them.
Do you have anything you would say?
I personally believe that they need it, and whatever I said is, especially as a convert, is doesn't have any meaning.
Yeah.
Because when you spend like so much time like learning about this and see how people like behaves and everything, so you understand like it's people that maybe has been there for like their families for generations and generations, and they don't have anything else.
Right.
And I think like people need to like educate themselves. I cannot go and tell like people who I really appreciate like take care of me when I was in Rexburg. As someone as an international student, it can be hard because you're by yourself. I mean, I didn't have any family in Idaho or close So I spent time with like friends or people like I was like knowing. And I don't feel like there's anything I can tell them, especially because they will always have like a response.
Right. Right.
In the church, something that it was really impressive for me when I joined the church is how much they know, like how much time they spend like reading and memorizing, and they can tell you like in this general conference of 1987. I was like, that's 34 years ago.
You're like, damn, coming out with a scripture.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, if they just spend this time like doing something more productive, like
Right.
they will do a lot with their life.
Right. Right. And I think that's one of the toughest things about religion. You know, I don't mean to attack Mormonism at all when I say this. And one of the reasons why I like to specify that this is not an anti-religion podcast, this is simply like an honest exploratory podcast, is because oftentimes the most helpful, the most ready to be there and to assist you and to do things and to provide things and to give you a shoulder to cry on and a kind word and a hot meal are the religious people in our lives. Yeah. My mom grew up dirt poor, like didn't even have running water in her home. Wow. And the people who took care of her were always either in the church or of the church, right? It was either the people who worked there or the people who went there the most. So of course, when someone feeds you and protects you and houses you and shows you love and shows you kindness, and as you mentioned, Idalia, they like it's this happy and this vibrant environment. And then that same person is like, yeah, being gay is not right. Also, it's, you know, you shouldn't like kiss or hold hands before you're married or whatever. Of course you believe them. Because one, they believe it. They're not lying to you. They actually believe that. But two, it's like, they've never been wrong about anything else. They've never led me astray. They've always been there for me. So why would they tell me this other thing that would be a lie or would not be true? And they say it with such conviction because they do believe it. I think the media oftentimes paints very religious people as like evil, vindictive, like, we don't want you to have it because we can't have it, which I mean, they're out there. Yes. But I think what gets forgotten is that most of the people do actually believe that stuff. My boyfriend grew up not religious at all. And the day I told him about Revelations, he did not believe. He's like, nobody believes that. He's like, that's a lie. He's like, that's bullshit. And I'm like, crazy. No, it's literally real. And he's like, no wonder they're so scared all the time. and so I think I said all that to say, I think you're right. You know, there are certain things you want to say and conversations you want to have, but one, there will always be that answer. Two, at the end of the day, you don't want to hurt the people that have always been there for you. Yeah. Even if you truly believe they don't realize they're hurting themselves in some of the beliefs that or things that they are, I don't want to say acting out, but some of the ways they're living their life may not be what's actually best for them. Getting married by 19 just so you can get your own planet is not good for you. Like, sis, give him the planet in the divorce. It's fine. Like, you're better off. And so I think that is the struggle. People who didn't grow up religious, whenever they hear about people trying to leave the church, they're like, I don't get it. Just leave. And you're like, it's not that simple. Anyone you've ever loved, the best people you know in your entire life, worship the church, both literally and figuratively. So by coming out as both gay and both non-religious, you're just 1-2, you know, like to what they've always known. And I've also heard a lot of people on this podcast talk about the day they realized they no longer wanted to be religious was when they had a gay friend or something like that. And they're like, what kind of God would send this person to hell? This is the best person I know. Like, so what? They love somebody that's the same gender. That's it. Like, what? You know? And that's when they realize there's like flaws in that logic. And so, yeah, I can definitely see how like that would be a tough conversation to have, because you're not confronting the haters. You're confronting the people that you love the most.
Oh yeah.
And that's like Dante's like Inferno, you know, that's like the final boss is like, how do you tell like your grandma or like your childhood best friend's mother? Yes. You know?
Yep.
But yeah. And then what about you, Mariah? Same question.
I think that I would say that a lot of okay, so for example, I have this friend who has decided to take a step back from Mormonism. Not that they've decided to completely leave yet, but they're kind of like, I kind of see like the faults in the church and I don't like it. And we used to have discussions, just like very open discussions about religion. And she, because she was a missionary at one point, she like knew all of the like dirty things that the church has done. Yeah, all the tea. She knew all the Mormon tea. But you're like trained as a missionary to like combat those things. And she, she never left the church because of like all of the awful things the church has done. She left it because she realized that the church was hurting her in some way. Like there was some damage being done to her. And so I don't know that I have anything in particular to say to the people who were really influential in my life, but I do love to have these like open conversations about religion and about our religion and what it's done. I've also had many conversations with my mother about how the church hurt me, especially as a queer woman. And she's been very understanding, but I think it's hard for her to really get it because she doesn't experience it the same way I do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My brother's spouse came out as non-binary last year, and they grew up Catholic, and it was very much a confusion, just like utter confusion.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean you don't know what you are? What do you mean
Right.
you're not a girl anymore? You've been a girl always. Like, what? And so I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there when it's like, it's easy to fear or it's easy to reject or brush under the rug something that doesn't impact you and never will, but now suddenly it's impacting you, right? Like as your mother, it's like, ooh, this isn't like something I read about or hear about my friends going through anymore. This is something that I need to confront myself.
Yes.
So
right.
do you foresee your futures being easier? Do you see the road being like complicated and difficult? Because I know you came out as engaged kind of at the same time. So do you see there being a lot of future conversations being had? Is that something you would want, or do you just see people kind of treating it the way it should be treated, which is like, congratulations for your engagement?
Yeah.
You know?
I think that conversations will always need to be had for, I'm sure, many centuries of this world. Like homophobia is not going away anytime soon, unfortunately. And I know I've never been a very like confrontational or combative person. And I think having conversations is an excellent tool in educating people.
Yes.
Because I think it just kind of like gets their mind like working and they
Yes.
have to think about things that they've never thought about before. And yeah. So although I think many of those conversations are really difficult to have, especially as I've had them with my parents who are very dear to me and who really do not believe the same things I do. They've been really difficult conversations, but I think they're conversations that need to be had.
Yeah.
So maybe eventually we'll have a community of people around us who don't ask us those questions, but I think they're fine if they are asked.
Yeah. And I think answering questions, like you said, is like the fastest way to educate somebody. Yeah, absolutely. And Idalia, sorry, I feel like I cut you off.
No, it's fine. When I went to Utah, my violin teacher, we were driving, and he was like, can I ask you questions? Like, he was trying to educate himself about LGBT, about queer persons. And he grew up like has LDS in Mexico. His family is LDS. And he's like, I asked all my friends, he actually right now he lives in Boston. He deals with another culture, like it's United States, but it's like more open. It's like, uh, anyways, like he asked me questions. He was like, maybe like an hour. We were talking about this and how like I find out I was gay, I was queer, and it was like 2 3 weeks ago. He called me. He started like, hey, like how are you? Da 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 da. How is Mariah? He knows about us, and he told me he and his wife left the church because they just have their second baby, and he's like, I don't want to raise my kids in a hateful church, like who teach kids to like hate someone for being gay or for have like other preference or being different than what the church teach.
Yeah. Yeah. And LDS, if I remember correctly, they have very, very strict rules on what happens once you leave the church. Am I thinking of something else? Am I thinking of?
In what way?
I've heard that basically like once you've been excommunicated, you're supposed to cut off contact with those people. Is that?
I think maybe the like FLDS.
Oh yeah, that's probably the like fundamentalist section of LDS people.
So there's fundamentalist LDS and then there's just LDS.
Yeah.
Got it.
I mean,
And
I know like, I'm sorry, a lot of people like just cut communication. There's like, it depends like how conservative or like into the church they are. I know like people, they found that you left the church or you're queer or you are, I don't know, they just like put like a distance. They can be like really nice, like, hey, how are you?
Yeah.
But with the distance.
They're not gonna like beat the shit out of you on the parking lot or anything like that, like throw hands. But
they will break their stereotype of Mormons being like super nice and friendly. So.
They're not.
Yeah, it turns out what we didn't know was that every Mormon church actually has a giant buff guy who, the minute he finds out somebody's leaving the church, he just shows up at your house and just like beats the shit out of you. In the name of God, though, in the name of God.
Absolutely.
So, separately, if you had a message for somebody who might be feeling the same way that you were feeling a couple of years ago, maybe they're unsure of their identity sexually, maybe they're unsure of their spiritual identity, their religious identity, they're kind of on the fence, what would each of you say to somebody like that who's questioning pretty much everything?
I think something that made me stay as long as it did is that I didn't know that I would be okay when I left. And I didn't know that I like wouldn't feel like super guilty for leaving or super guilty for being gay. Like I just had this idea of what being a queer non-member person was like. And now that I am that person, it's nothing like what I thought it would be.
Yeah.
So I know there's like a lot of like fear in like becoming who you are as a person instead of who you thought God wanted you to be. But it's not as hard or as scary as it seems.
Was it harder to come out as non-religious or as gay?
Non-religious.
I was going to say, I thought that was harder.
Yes. My parents were like, oh yeah, we know you're gay. But the second I said I didn't believe in God, it was a like 3-hour long conversation on the phone.
Yeah. That's good answer though. I really like that answer. I think fear is what keeps most people religious. I'm not even religious anymore. And every once in a while I'll still go, but what if?
Yeah.
But what if? But what if? Right? Like I am solid in my scientific hypotheses, right? And I still have those moments where like, yeah, but what if I die and it was all real and I'm going to hell over a podcast. Like what the fuck is going on? So yeah, I think all religions as a whole rule in fear, even the ones who might genuinely not know. They all rule in fear of the afterlife, fear of rejection, fear of the unknown, fear of what they're reading in the text, fear of people finding out that they're not actually as religious as they say because they think everyone else is more religious, when it turns out, I think a lot of people would be surprised to find out everybody thinks it's a little bit bullshit, like a little bit bullshit. Like even the pastor's wife is like, Noah, he didn't fucking do, like he didn't.
Right.
And then Idalia, same question to you. What would you say to somebody? Because you had quite the journey. You went from one religion to the next religion to no religion, and also a new country, and also coming out as gay. Like, what would you say?
I was a music teacher back home in Mexico.
You guys were perfect for each other. It's ridiculous.
And I have like 2 students like asking me like in private, like sending me like DMs or like talking in private after lessons or classes, like about their like thinking about like maybe they're queer, they're like part of the LGBT community, and kind of like overwhelming. And I was like, you're 15, breathe. Like, don't rush. Like,
Right.
Learn, wait, especially because you're a minor. Like you cannot go and like fight to your family when you live in their house. You need to like learn about yourself, because until this day, like I continue learning about myself, my sexuality. During the pandemic, I was like, I think I'm non-binary because I have never been like feminine, but I'm feel like I don't feel like a woman, I don't feel like a man. I'm kind of like in the middle, and I start like learning and watching videos on YouTube and like learning reading articles and that kind of stuff. So I just feel like for me it's just like take it easy, step by step, day by day. Like through your life, you're gonna be in so many phases. Like as you say, like I grew up as Catholic, and then I was kind of like, oh, whatever, and then I was like LDS, and right now I'm like, but I continue learning. I love like watching like TikToks where I can continue learning.
She also reads like actual books. Like when I say I'm researching, I'm looking at TikTok.
What does she read? What was that word you used?
Books.
Is that Spanish? I don't know. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I got like
she reads like religious books, and I'm like,
I got like 2 books because I have like, I want to learn like where all these come from. And one I just finished in like a couple of months because I'm a slow reader.
I mean, she reads them in English, which is amazing.
Yeah.
That's freaking wild. Like, take your time. That's fine.
And is this book called Christians Before Christ. So it technically talks about how like has been many gods, just the same story over and over again, different cultures, like you can name it, like and it's like has always been like a semi-god or like a god who came from a virgin, and like everything is kind of like similar and stuff. Even this, how you say, zodiac signs are related because we have like it's 12 zodiac signs. We have 12 months. There's 12 apostles. So it's kind of like putting all this together. It's kind of like an old book from the 80s. I wish there was like a new version, so like more modern with all the history we have like learned thanks to technology. But yeah, I like to continue learning. I really like, I think appreciate that because getting into the LDS church and learning about like, oh, this is how they
manipulate.
No. Like control people, manipulate people. And one time we were in the store and I told Mariah, it's just like religion is like so smart because what is the only thing you cannot buy in Amazon? And she was like, salvation. Your salvation.
Like, Jeff Bezos, he'll figure it out. He'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Like the church tells you the fact like you will see your family again.
Yeah.
Like hope to be in a better world, like paradise. And I mean, I like to learn like how like everything is controlled and like learn about like the LDS church is like a organization. Like it's a we were talking about hierarchy, you say? Hierarchy. So we have the president and we have like everything like go and it's just like impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fascinating when you're outside of it and you know you can't get trapped by it. Wait,
Yeah.
it's like being at the zoo and the lion's like on the other side of the fence. You're like, I'm safe here. I can learn about you, but you can't get me. Yeah, and to your point, as I've been doing this episodes of this podcast, it's wild the similarities that religions have. For example, the Aztecs, their god was born from a virgin.
Right.
I learned that like 2 weeks ago. My mind was freaking blown. And I feel like the same trauma that people suffer from their religions is the same. There's always that purity. I feel like purity culture is just worldwide. There's that I think one of the more toxic lessons that all religions teach is when they come to you and they say, when people ask you that, when they make you question your belief, that's the devil. When they make you question, instead of encouraging you to be like, study it, learn it, come to your own conclusions. We're here for you. Let's spitball questions. Instead of the pastor being like, that's a great question. I don't know. Let's look that up. Which, to be fair, I have met pastors that are very pro like research and stuff. But instead of that, it's, oh, by the way, there will be a time in your life when you question your faith. That's the devil. Don't fall for it. So then you're like me and you're like 28, 29, at the time. And you're like, I don't think I'm not into this. And then you're like, wait a second. What if this is what they always warned me about? That's how
is this Satan?
Yeah. That's how you get got. But that being said, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I've been fascinated by this conversation, and I really appreciate you being on this podcast and giving me just kind of your thoughts and your opinions and answering all of my questions. I was absolutely fascinated to talk to you. I was so glad that you joined us, Idalia. And so thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. And I think each episode, I hope helps people learn a little bit more. And I hope that people look at you too and they see that you can be deserving of love. You can be deserving of happiness and joy and not follow the rules that you were led to believe would give you that happiness. It is possible to find love and partnership and acceptance outside of the church. And whether or not people decide to stay in the church, that's totally their business, but they don't have to stay there to get those things.
Absolutely.
And you told me that you guys are moving to Mexico.
Yeah.
See what I mean? Like what religion is like, move to Mexico, like go to Vegas, like do all this, like, God, like that's the Jesus I want to know. I bet he would like Vegas. He would have written about Vegas if he'd known about it. He would have said something. He would have been like, thou shalt not get caught counting cards or something like that. That would be like the 13th commandment or something.
Yeah.
But again, thank you so much for your time. I wish you both the best, all the happiness. And I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yeah, us too.
All right, I'll see you later.
See ya.
Bye.